Welcome to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP, in association with thelibertybeacon.com. And I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Leonard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show.
This meeting is being recorded.
Hello, everybody. I have with me now Andrew Thorp King, and I've mentioned this on other shows. There's a service to kind of, I don't know what words I'm looking for here. I'm already can't get my brain in my mouth to cooperate. A service that can bring together podcasts and people who have an expertise or are speakers to come on podcasts. And I found Andrew through Podcast Guest List. So to open the show, I'm just going to read what I wrote to him about why I think he's a fit for the show. And then we'll go from there. I wrote, and I got to bring this close to my face, even with my eyeglasses. This print is small. Wow. Would love to talk to you regarding 5 essential rules getting value from failure, as my show tries to always be about having positive life outlook and ways to be happy and better selves. And this is great in the we can learn from our failures to be better and achieve future success type moments. But indeed, we need to learn how. Far too many are disappointed and depressed when, God, this print is small, having setbacks and need encouragement to continue forward when life's lessons gives us lemons, how to make lemonade from it. And you indeed agreed. It'd be a great discussion. So here you are. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, man. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I guess the first obvious question is, we know your name. Andrew, Andrew, Thorp, Thorp, King. But tell us about your background.
Yep. So, like you said, Andrew Thorp King, the author here of Failure Rules, the 5 rules of failure for entrepreneurs, creatives, and authentics. So, I've been like a lifelong entrepreneur and creative in my 20s and 30s, kind of experienced what I would call a lot of off-road entrepreneurial adventuring. Owned a fitness center, started 2 record labels that I still own today, did a lot of things in the banking and finance space, financial planning, lead generation company, online lending businesses, both onshore and offshore. Had my hands in a lot of different things. And through all that experience, along with some other personal pursuits like being a bodybuilder and being in a punk rock band and doing some other things, there's some things I think I learned about going after difficult, unorthodox career paths or personal pursuits. And so, the roadblocks, the difficulties and the failures that might litter those paths more frequently are something that you can learn from. It can really help to shape your own personal story in a more profound way. And so the book really talks about that concept, both for me personally, and then a wide array of case studies of both well-known figures and emerging influencers and just other unique stories that I thought fit what I kind of unearthed as the 5 rules of failure. And so the book really centers around these 5 rules, and they're not really hard rules like do this and you'll get X result. They're more kind of mindset principles to think about and reflect on.
Okay, we'll go into the 5 when we don't want to give them all away. We want them to buy the book, of course.
That's right.
We'll dabble in maybe 1 or 2 a little bit from now, but here's where I usually also say this is an audio show. However, I do use video behind the scenes sneak peek sneak peek. Oh my God, my mouth will not work tonight. Sneak peek video of the show on BitChute, Brighteon, Rumble, and YouTube, and people can go there to see it and look at you and say, "There's no way you were a bodybuilder."
Easy. I got
No,
it.
you could definitely tell you're still pretty bulked up in decent shape. Also, they can see if they are a cigar enthusiast, they want to look and see you sucking on that stogie. What kind of cigar is that?
Yeah, this is a Tatuaje Cajuno 2012, one of my favorite cigars recently. Been smoking a lot of these. Yeah, these are outstanding.
And you mentioned record labels. I talked with Gista, a rapper originally from New Orleans. So maybe you could check out that episode. So I've had recording artists on. It's interesting that you have that also that tie, that background. I'll be forwarding this show along to him saying, "Hey, check out this guy who's got record labels. You may want to look into him." But what is the top rule or the least interesting rule so that we entice them to want to buy to see 1, 2, and 3? What's the least important rule?
Least important. They're all important, I would say. But I think the one that's probably the most different and maybe less intuitive is failure rule number 3, which is money is spiritual. And so it's the idea that if we're viewing money properly and we're viewing it in kind of a objective way where we're not worshiping money, nor are we reviling money, right? So it becomes a agnostic tool in our lives that we can use to enhance our lives, bless other people, and lift ourselves out of failure. And we eschew the failure territories of envy and greed, seeing that as kind of edge territories of failure. And if you avoid those failure territories, then money can be a wildly powerful tool, a spiritual tool, really, because it's in essence it's a thank you note. It's a measure of thankfulness for place value. And so when you view it that way, I think that it can have a lot of power in lifting us out of certain failures, particularly entrepreneurial, economic, career type failures.
I'm glad you said that. That's a good rule and segue, since this is ChristiTutionalist politics, to look at the money aspect from the Christian biblical standpoint. Money is not the root of all evil. The love of money and desire to accumulate masses of it to reach the moon with is what is evil or can be evil. Otherwise, indeed, it is a tool. And again, Jesus said, "Render unto Caesar." What was he talking about? Not communist government. He was talking about coin. Minted coin is of the government, and tax, therefore, is Caesar's domain of the money, of the governmental money supply. But because that's a scripture often one of the many that's most bastardized. It is not money is the root of all evil. It is the love and lust for money that is evil.
Yeah, and when you talk about the love and lust for money, I mean, people equate that with greed, but I think the twin malevolent sibling of greed is envy too. So I think those who are envious, who may not have a lot, but scorn those that might have some, there's just as much to look at there and criticize and be cautioned of as well, right? So again, it's looking at it in an agnostic, objective way. It's neither good nor bad. It's a tool if used correctly, and if used correctly, can be something that can really, have a lot of power to bless yourself and others, right? And so, I think that is, for me, is part of my failure story, right? There was a time where I had gone bankrupt from some business pursuits, my record labels. I was able to save the companies, but there was a time where I really had no income and had a lot of reinvention that I had to contend with. And through that period, it was wealthy people who somehow did not judge this heavily tattooed bodybuilder guy and still saw me as a worthy human being to pour their mentorship into. And it was wealthy people who really gave me opportunities, referred me to other people, helped me build up a financial planning practice. And so, I was really, really blessed by the generosity and the humanity of wealthy people. And it really did teach me that value, that money is spiritual. And it allowed me to have, upward social and financial mobility. And so
You were a yuppie.
I don't know about that,
but yeah, a couple things on that. Yeah, I mean, we are in the world now, and it takes money to do things in the world. We all need money to some degree from somewhere, some source. Yeah, you're right. Envy is just as bad as the sinful lust of ever desiring just more and more and more and more, that it never ends. Equally, indeed, are bad. We need some. Of course, economies are different in rural areas. Of course, cost of living is far less than a San Francisco or a New York City or the South American continent, the African continent. Money, US dollar, can go a long, 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 long way there. Different from Australia, different from Asia, different from Europe. And there's that juxtaposition. And you're right. I've never gotten this envy thing. Yes, poorer people can manage to come up with cash to start small businesses, but I've never got a job from a poor person.
Exactly.
Right. It's always been usually the wealthier people who then indeed understand the money as a tool, and they look to invest it in other things.
That's right.
Which, yes, indeed amasses them more money, but
sure.
It gives other people jobs and fulfills needs of consumers.
Yep. And if those people are then good stewards of that extra money that they make, and they're continuing to reinvest it and grow it, it's going to touch different people in different ways and continue to, hopefully, in a correctly handled kind of way, spiritualize the use of that money to enable, people to be lifted up more and more out of poverty, or more and more into prosperity, to have more, lives that are more and more fulfilling. So, yeah, you're illustrating, I think, precisely what I'm talking about.
Yeah. And let me admit, again, I'm not perfect. I'm a sinner. At times I am indeed jealous, but within perspective, that's still far and away from complete envy and covetousness, and desire to then fleece that person, whether it be through robbery illegally or legalized theft through taxation. Right? Some people I know would say the biggest terrorist organization on the planet is the Internal Revenue Service. But at any rate, and the other thing along the lines of the wealthy, if there's so much envy, hate, jealousy, covetousness, and attempt to want to punish those people, then eventually, Ayn Rand, Atlas shrugged, eventually Atlas will shrug, and they'll just say, fine, we're shutting everything down. We're going to go buy our own islands, and to hell with all you people. We've got our money. We can live the rest of our lives out on islands off in the oceans, and you people deal with the nothingness left behind. So Atlas Shrugged, which unfortunately why communist leaning economists like a Paul Krugman don't want that book read in schools anymore. There's a lot of life lessons in that book. You've read Atlas Shrugged, I would take it.
Yep. Yeah. So 100%. Yeah. No, I mean, that's, if you bastardize and destroy the incentive structure for those that take extraordinary risks to produce, institutions, business structures of value that then also disproportionately but appropriately reward them. If you destroy those incentive structures, you're going to rob the world of progress and inventiveness and forward-moving prosperity, right? So, yeah, you don't want the shrugging.
Right.
Fun.
Even Bono of U2, who was admittedly 25 years ago a communist, said he awoken. During the G.W. Bush administration, G.W. Bush brought him in to be part of the 1,000 Points of Light initiative and indeed helped those on other continents to create self-fulfilling self-ability, the pull them up by the bootstraps rather than make them dependent on handouts forever. The teach a man to fish principle, right? If you constantly are just giving them a fish, they're dependent. Whereas teaching them, even if it's just simple basket weaving, they have then a skill to then create their own economies upon and lift more boats. U2 of Bono finally woke to that fact and says, indeed, free markets and capitalism have lifted more people from poverty in the entire history of humankind.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, and, it's not just the tangible conclusion of that or natural outcome of that where people are able then to sustain themselves materially, but it's also the intangible development of their spirit and their esteem that happens throughout that process, which is even potentially more important and is then the transferable asset that could take them from one pursuit to another.
Yeah, someone who is dependent. And there are a lot of people, unfortunately. Jesus said the poor will always be among you. There will always be, as part of human nature, lazy con artists looking to coast their way through life on handouts. That's always going to be the case. But most people want that hole that would be left out, being dependent on someone else all the time, to be able to be filled by becoming self-sufficient. And I'm glad I made a note. I wrote down merit, because when we were talking about Atlas Shrugged, some want to replace the meritocracy with a kleptocracy and ineptocracy. Just giving people jobs, do work jobs that don't really fulfill any needs or service just for the sake of, again, making them dependent in a way for that do nothing job, and eliminating meritocracy. Yeah. When we eliminate that, again, we're back to Atlas Shrugged. But I wanted to ask you about the book again, which I will read the title again to make sure I get right. 5 Essential Rules Getting Value from Failure. Let's talk about your publishing process. Did you self-publish, or were you fortunate enough to find a publisher who believed in the book to want to publish it and hopefully put some upfront money in your pocket?
I'll answer that question here in just a second. Just to go back to talking about those that have, quote unquote handouts. I think you're right that obviously there's always going to be people in this world that don't want to work and don't want to do the things that they need to do to try to self-sustain themselves, and handouts then obviously become attractive. But I also think there's a lot of people in this country that really, really do want to be self-sustained, are working their butts off, and still need help and still need handouts, fill in the gaps. And my heart really goes out to those people. I've been in that position, so I'm not one to demonize people that fall into a position where they need to fill in gaps and take handouts, which really end up being hand ups if they're doing all they can do and are working and are kind of part of the working poor. And so those people really are close to my heart. So they're not people that I ever want to throw.
I agree. And on my terrorstrikes.info site, you can go to terrorstrikes.info/charity. I have lists of charities, indeed, that help causes, because at any point in our life, you don't know what may happen. And indeed, we may need a temporary period of help.
Yeah.
It becomes an issue of when you expect that help to always be there and that to be your sole livelihood. That's my point. Even the Bible says, help widows and orphans. It specifically says, help those who cannot help themselves versus those who will not help themselves.
100%. Yeah. So back to your question about self-publishing. So I did choose a self-publishing route. I went through Lion's Crest Publishing, and there's kind of a professional self-publishing imprint run by Scribe Media. So I hired them, the same outfit that was hired by David Goggins, by James Altucher, and Nassim Taleb, all best-selling authors. Use them because they're super pro. It was a company started by Tucker Max, who wrote "I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell," and they all have veterans of the publishing industry working there. So I had multiple sets of astute eyes on the manuscript for the editing. Great designers there. The woman that did the cover art does cover art for Stephen King. And a great marketing team that really helped me launch the book and kind of get me out there in the media as much as possible.
Yeah, I say there's a difference. One of my books that's currently internationally available is How to Write a Book and Get It Published, Hints, Tips, and Techniques. There is the traditional route, which is shrinking more and more and more. They've got their stable of writers. They ride those horses. Then there's what I call assisted publishing, like what you're talking. Then there's the entire self-publishing, which is, really, really low end, very bare bones. If you've got no money, that's your route. But if you've got money, it's good to go assisted publishing, like I did with Illumify Media, like you did, because indeed, Illumify has former big publishing firm employees in that operation. They know what they're doing. And because especially your first book, you don't know what the hell you're doing. You need some experts, and there's value, and there's therefore cost associated with that.
That's right. Yep. 100%. Yeah. No, I found it to be the right path for sure.
Yep. Yeah. And that market is now so saturated with the prevalence of ability with Amazon. Indeed, anyone can throw a Microsoft Word document together, put it up on Amazon, and call it a book. So the market is so saturated. That's the biggest thing. And obviously, one of the reasons you're here, one of the reasons I do interviews for my books, you got to market and promote in that huge ocean that we are but a drop of.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, it's definitely, you remove the gatekeepers, it's a wide open gate, which is great in terms of access for those that otherwise wouldn't have access. But it also means that you have a lot of kind of watered down kind of, entrance into a space. So there's a lot of noise. So you got to break through it. And I think doing an assisted publishing in a professional way and having a sound marketing plan is one way to break through that noise.
Well, you mentioned your cover. Someone working there used to work in some way, shape, or form doing Stephen King covers. That's in my How to Write a Book and Get It Published, Hints, Tips, and Techniques. There is a cover design chapter. And, just Martin Luther King Jr. was correct. content of character. Don't judge a person by their cover, but sorry, people, your book is judged by its cover. If that's not good, nobody's going to pick it up and look at it, right?
No, it's true. It's definitely true. Yeah. Yep. And she nailed it in terms of my art direction for the cover for my book, and it seemed like it really represents the content, and people are attracted to the book. I mean, the cover art is somewhat simple, but it kind of packs a punch. It definitely draws people in with the color scheme and my image and the flames of the phoenix in the background. So
yeah. Well, I'm glad you described it a bit for those hearing on audio only. But again, people can check out the video behind the scenes if they want to see the cover, or of course, just go to Amazon and take a peek at it, right? And then while you're there, you may as well buy it. So, but I've lost my train of thought because I didn't make the note. I did want to ask, since I forgot what I was going to. Oh, on your cover, you know who Michael Savage is, right?
Sure. Yep.
The radio guy, the guy that got banned from England. Yeah. On your cover, if you want to hold that up again, it almost looks like him.
I never heard that before. No, I can see that. I can see that.
You can see that now that I say it, though, right?
I can see that. I never heard that before, but I can see that. I can see why you said that. Yeah, because he's always got some cool hats like the fedora I'm wearing, and he's got the beard. I don't think he smokes cigars like I do or has tattoos. But yeah,
right.
The hat. Yeah, for sure.
Again, we don't want to give away all 5 rules. What can you give another tease, another rule? Again, not give it all away. We want people to buy the book, but tease another rule.
Yeah, so another one would be failure rule number 5, which is kind of the last rule, caps it all off, is you are not your failures. It's the idea of decoupling your identity from a failure event. So you go through a failure event, even if it's an ethical one, even if it's one of complete dereliction of duty, like, you really advocated your personal responsibility and there was a failure in life. And a lot of failures aren't that. A lot of failures are externally imposed and may not be your fault, and it's just part of living in a broken world. But the idea that when you go through a failure event, it's just an event. Like, it's up to you to kind of stand outside of that, be a third-party observer of that event, take the emotion out of it as soon as you're able to, although that's difficult because failure sucks in the immediate sense before you're able to make it rule. But that's really failure rule number 5, is you are not your failures. And once you realize that, you can shed that old skin of your failures, sketch your life anew. I go through the example of, like the talk show host Glenn Beck, and how, before he was who he is today. I mean, he was an alcoholic DJ, dabbled in cocaine, was known to be really kind of, excuse my language. Well, I don't know if I can curse on this show, but
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he's going to be kind of an asshole to people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, I go through his example and how, he was then concerned when he kind of like changed his life and found religion. He became a Mormon and found a new wife, and he was concerned about his word and his reputation and his good name, because it had all been tarnished by the failure events of his life, mostly because of his own choices. But he was able to resketch his life and detach from those failure events. And he had eventually learned that you are not your failures. And, his life was turned around. And whatever you think of his politics, either way, like there's been an impact by the things he's done with his media presence and some of the other personalities that he's helped come along. So he's kind of one of the examples I go through.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Ed Bondarenka, and I host Your American Heritage on Saturdays at 2 in the afternoon on this station. Your American Heritage is a show about the struggle we find ourselves in and how to react to it in the light of our biblical and American heritage. Listen to it while you're working around the house, the garage, cleaning the guns, walking the dog, driving, or just lazing around. Join me at 2 o'clock Saturdays here on Wham Radio, 1600 AM, 92.7 FM.
God bless America.
Oh, that's great. That's wonderful. I used to be an avid Glenn Beck watcher. I don't watch The Blaze, but I used to when he was on CNN. He was the only person on that channel I could stomach to watch. And then, of course, when he went to Fox, and then when he started The Blaze, I watched for a while. One of the people that I love that he partnered with that was good, if you're looking for historically accurate reading, David Barton. If you know Glenn Beck, I know you then know who David Barton is.
Yeah. Yep. Good historian. Absolutely.
Yeah. And another example along the lines of what you said, like Glenn, most on the right, who would be the bulk of my audience, let's just be honest with that, although I try to appeal to everybody, would be a Michael Lindell. In fact, he wrote his book, right, from crack addict to CEO.
Yeah. That would be a very similar example. Yeah. What cracks me up about him, again, regardless of what people think of him or, do or don't, like the idea that he was like, he specifically didn't want to be called like a cokehead. Like he wanted to make sure, he didn't just do coke, like he did crack. Like he wanted you to know that, the heaviest stigmatized like 80s drug, like that was his thing, and he was not shying away or running from that history at all. And that cracks me up.
Well, part of, I think,
no pun intended, it cracks me up.
Yeah. Well, and to tie that all together to what you were saying about failure and not being personal, I think not allowing that to completely destroy you personally is that admission, though, self-admission of your fault or your failure then can lead to great success, because it shows at least you've learned something from it, not that you're trying to run from it and, it was so-and-so's fault I failed, and such and such. It's always a victim. Somebody else's fault for you've got to admit your own inadequacies to be able to build around them a foundation you can build something solid upon. That weakness underlying will still be there, but if you built yourself a good solid floor to build up from, then you're good. So I think this is all important. But an admission here, Michael Lindell drives me crazy. I am bleeping tired of the pillow ads.
Yeah.
And I own a few of his pillows. So full disclosure, I own whatever my pillows, but God almighty, can we not have a My Pillow ad every 5 seconds? It drives me crazy.
Yeah, if you go back to what you're saying about like owning your failure, right? Like I think part of that really is that learning how to be self-deprecating, and that's part of like separating yourself from the failure. So I talk about that in the book too. I have a chapter on failure humor where I talk about Rodney Dangerfield's story and just about how he was bullied growing up from anti-Semitic bullies, and then he was divorced, depressed, and his humor really was like the quintessential failure humor, where all of his humor was basically making fun of himself or people going through things he went through. And that was his way of dealing with it and processing it and moving forward. And I think that's a beautiful thing too. And I talk about comedians like Bill Burr or Louis C.K. who've done the same. But yeah, I think that's part of the process too is, I have a line in the book where I say, sometimes you need to take yourself less seriously to seriously put your life back together again, And I think
Amen.
that's part of the message.
Even in my Terror Strikes Coming Soon to a City Near You book on terrorism, very serious, though I'd like to say it's not about death. It's about life and living. There is a comic relief chapter to make that point. You've got to be able to laugh. And you mentioned Dangerfield. I think of Jamie Lissow currently. His comedy tour is called The Divorced Dad Tour, and his whole shtick is poking fun at his failure as a husband, right? And being a divorced dad. So you've got to admit things, and you've got to keep a sense of humor no matter how serious things are. I don't go very long with my shows, and again, I don't want to try to drag out the other things because we want them to buy your book. So let me ask, do you have an author site to refer people to?
Everybody can go to andrewthorpking.com. There's no E on the end of Thorp, So it's Andrew Thorp King, THORP.com. From there, you get to my Instagram, which is also at Andrew Thorp King. You can buy the book on Amazon or anywhere books are sold online. There's also an awesome audiobook as well. And it's all formats: hardcover, paperback, ebook, audiobook. So go check it out. Failure Rules with an exclamation mark. The 5 Rules of Failure for Entrepreneurs, Creatives, and Authentics is the subtitle. But yeah, AndrewThorpKing.com or at Andrew Thorp King on Instagram.
Although Instagram is being a real pain again and announcing more crackdowns, more rules, more censorship of content. So please join some of the other ones. I'm on more than a dozen social media platforms. I don't want to limit myself, right? I can easily cut and paste the same commentary to different platforms and reach different people that way. And when you're promoting a book, social media, for the most part, the platforms are free. You don't turn down free, right? Oh, there's a little bit of time obviously involved in that, but you don't turn down free. So yes, it's not an Amazon exclusive. It's available through Barnes & Noble and Books A Million or Booktopia for my viewers in Australia. Shout out. I know you're there. I see the stats. So yeah, available anywhere you get books. If you got a mom and pop bookstore near you, please go to them first. Ask them to look it up. They can find it and bring it in for you. Support our local brick and mortar stores while we still have them to support. Thank you, Andrew Thorp King, for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it. Hold up the book and give the name one last time.
Sure. Failure Rules, the 5 Rules of Failure for Entrepreneurs, Creatives, and Authentics.
All right. Thank you. Take care. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you for having tuned in for ChristiTutionalist Politics Show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you, or autographed copies are available online direct from me via terrorstrikes.info/shop. Be sure to check out more about today's discussion at thelibertybeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, no fancy high production intro or inserts, at least yet, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help to...
It is a myth that terrorism stopped during COVID. Unfortunately, mainstream media opted to prioritize pandemic hysteria over promoting all news. Terrorism continues. Simply hoping that it doesn't affect you is not a strategy. The new book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you, featured on The Author Show, is now available in paperback from bookstores, online, or as an ebook exclusively through Amazon Kindle. Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you by Joseph M. Leonard. Order today.